everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gettin Buzz'd. I'm Dustin Brackett, CEO and founder of HIVE Digital Strategy. With me as always is Michael Thebeau. He's our business development manager and resident finger gun specialist. And today we've got a special guest. John Pszenny with HubSpot is here. We're going to be talking about auditing your marketing and how that kind of translates into content for your sales team and through your sales process, right? But before we get into that, we're on team day drinking. Quarantine.
As always.
Yeah, I mean, COVID's getting a little even more intense in Colorado. They just came out with the mandatory masks today. So, you know what? I feel like day drinking is acceptable. So
I think alcohol kills it.
yeah, I think we're just being safe.
Just doing our part.
Yeah.
You know? So this is not, so we're drinking Sam Adams Boston Lager. It's obviously not local to us in Colorado, but John is over there in the
harbor.
Yeah, with all the wicked people and in Harvard Yard.
The lobster.
I wore the Cape Cod Chatham shirt just to make it really legit today.
Just to let us know that you're a legit Bostonian.
Oh yeah, Massachusetts has had the mandatory masks for months now, so I've just been drinking this whole time.
You know what? It works. You got to do what you got to do during COVID, I think.
Gotta get past the way somehow. Cheers, guys. Thank you for having me on.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I had mentioned, today we're talking about kind of auditing your marketing, your content, and then how to kind of start to use some of that content to fuel your sales process, right? So what does kind of auditing your content really look like, or your marketing look like?
It's a great question. To give intro myself a little bit, my name is John Pszenny. I work at HubSpot. I've been at HubSpot for about 5 years now, working and consulting with our top 8 solutions agency partners, which has been an amazing experience and getting to see lots of internally how businesses work and how they're not only approaching this subject, but just seeing how folks are managing, like working through COVID and stuff. And it's been inspiring to see how companies are really managing to get through it. So hats off to everyone watching this. Audit. Yeah. All right. This is how it's going to go. Huh? All right. So marketing, auditing your marketing is definitely something that if you're not doing it regularly as a company, you really should be. It's something that you're only going to grow through not only making sure your marketing is going in the right direction, but also that your sales team is supported with the best content when they get into conversations with folks. We live in hey, sales reps need to be able to create a digital relationship nowadays, which is super hard from when we evolved from like the handshake in person, making sales agreements and conversations. Like now it's all digital. So sales reps really need to be prepped with the best assets and stuff to really help them sell their product service to their clients.
Yeah, and I think that, like you had mentioned, like I think that relationship's so much harder to build now. Like I think you probably even have to provide even more value than you did previously, right? Because they don't really know you. They don't necessarily trust you yet. Like you're not able to build that one-to-one connection like you could even like 6 months ago, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think what's important when it comes to auditing your marketing, again, it should be something that's you're regularly doing, but also that you're auditing it with the intelligence you're getting from your sales team, because they're the ones who are communicating with your customers the closest and the most often. So when you get that feedback loop between marketing and sales, when taking kind of a magnifying glass to the content your marketing team is creating, you really want to make sure that those teams are sort of communicating with each other, so that when you are reviewing, hey, did these ebooks or this blog or these assets that we've put out there, like how are they operating, and is the voice that we're emulating in these pieces of content and these assets, is it really capturing the essence of what our customers are really looking for as far as the pain points they have, and positioning us as a thought leader? And how can this content be used by our sales team in that sort of digital relationship building conversation with our customers? As far as like an approach to how you would start that, I would say kind of a constant sort of quarterly review of like what your marketing, like how the different assets you have positioned either on your website or the things that you're allowing folks to download, seeing how those things are operating as far as how many downloads you're getting. Are people spending a lot of time looking at that content? Do we have content that is viewed a lot or downloaded a lot by leads or potential customers that we can repurpose into a smaller form and give it to sales so that they can have, an easy piece of content that they can hand off to a prospect in a sales conversation to help them really sell their services or product in that conversation with the customer.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting. Like we had touched on this on a previous podcast, but sales and marketing have always kind of lived in their own silos, right? Like there wasn't a whole lot of like co-working or like really any initiatives that were focused on the same prospect, right? The same person. It was, marketing had to create content, and a lot of times I think it was just creating content for the sake of creating content. Like there wasn't really a rhyme or reason behind it. Even if they knew who we wanted to sell to, they didn't really know all those things that the sales team uncovers all the time, right? Those frequently asked questions that they're getting, those pain points that are really the selling points for you. And I think that it is interesting to take that kind of perspective and to understand, okay, hey, here are the new companies that we've closed, that our sales teams closed. Okay, where did they come from? Like what content were they consuming before? What questions did they have? How are we answering those things? It's super powerful.
Yeah.
And,
it's actually super interesting too. So Forrester, a couple companies actually recently came out with a couple studies. Two top of mind, Forrester and this company called Media Connection actually found, so just on the topic of content and marketing, being able to audit it to see how well it's working and be able to repurpose it for sales in some particular way. These two companies ran an interesting study where Forrester actually found that overall 82% of buyers viewed at least 5 pieces of content from the winning vendor during the decision stage of the purchasing process. So that's after they went through your entire marketing nurturing. This is at the decision stage. And then Media Connection actually came out with another interesting tidbit of data that was, I think it's 68% of consumers feel more positive about a brand when consuming content from it during the sales process.
Well, I think yes, it establishes that authority, right? Like you don't want to work with a business that you're not sure actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Or isn't actually being helpful. But I think one of the things, like the misconceptions, is that like content has always felt like a marketing function, right? It's always been, we need to pump out all this content because we need to get people to our website, right? We need to get them to fill out a form. But I think there needs to be more emphasis placed on the sales process with content, right?
Yeah, 100%. There's a couple different reasons why sales should be using content. I know like talking a little bit more about auditing, but like the why they should be applying content in the sales process is for a couple reasons. One, it helps them stay agile and productive. Two, it helps them, as you just mentioned, positions them as thought leaders. Sales reps, sales is one of the least trusted positions or professions in of all the jobs that you can have. I think it's like the 4th least trusted. So having the ability to position yourself as a thought leader is super important. And then back to sort of the point on you need to be able to create a relationship digitally, and just being able to email people is sometimes not enough, because most of the time people delete their inboxes so quickly that if you're not being memorable and you're not creating sort of this connection with your prospect in some way that sets you apart from all the others that are trying to sell their product or service, you're going to probably lose out on that deal. So staying top of mind. And then finally, the kind of ability to help you sell internally. So content is going to help you be able to better communicate with the not only person you're speaking to, but any internal people they need to connect with to be able to sell your product or service. You've had that, you maybe have built a relationship with that person you've met internally at the company, but what if that person is just an influencer and they're not the one who sort of holds the wallet? How can you stand apart from other people and be able to communicate your thought leadership and all those points we just mentioned to the person who's the actual decision maker if they haven't been a part of that relationship building on those phone calls and stuff? How can you have like an easy way to sell yourself to those people and help promote that influencer internally to help achieve your goal and make them look awesome?
Well, and I think the process of, like, most salespeople aren't your creatives, right? They're not creating that content. And I think that's where the biggest disconnect has been, right? It's just a different personality that runs a marketing team or creates your content and the people that sell. And so I think that that's always been the disconnect, that essentially the sales is asking for that content from marketing. And it's almost like this like tug of war, right? Where if we can get those teams to really mesh and realize that they're on the same team and fighting for the same goal, then having that marketing team create a robust piece of content that can convert leads, but then also whittle that down to something that Michael can say, hey, I know you're having this issue. Here's a quick one sheeter. Here's this quick checklist, or whatever that piece of content is that I think can actually help solve some of your problem or help you identify what the problem is. That's super powerful stuff. And then you as a salesperson are really immediately providing value. Like, you haven't charged them a dime, you haven't sent them a quote, you haven't said, hey, sign on this line, but you've helped. And I think that is a big deal.
Yep. Super interesting on that point too. Really interesting data point was so Google last year just did a study on basically like that exact sort of measure, like, hey, Michael being able to hand out a piece of content, like help them be able to sell internally and kind of have an easy thing to consume. They found that 81% of non-C-suite employees influence purchasing decisions at the end of the day. And over half of that 81% are millennials. What do millennials like to consume? Content. Right. And so like a lot of that time, the person who ends up having a lot of influence in that purchasing decision and getting the decision maker to actually open the wallet and move forward with that transaction is someone who is not a C-suite executive and someone who is likely younger and grew up in a generation of like consuming content and being able to have something that's quick and efficient to hand off to someone, which is super interesting too.
Yeah, that is. It's also interesting that you just know all the statistics.
I've been doing this way too long, so like a lot of the statistics just land up in the old brain, and I can't get it out. You ask me about everyday things though, and my memory is gone, so it's all just filled up with this
but
stuff.
I feel like we can just throw out a percentage, and you're like, yeah, I have 4 different stats on that percentage.
I'm curious when it comes to like the actual auditing of your previous marketing and content. Who do you guys recommend does that? Is it the marketing team, the marketing director? Is it the sales team? Do we somehow figure out how to work both of them into it to get on the same page?
Yeah, Dustin, what do you feel like you've seen in the past on that?
I think most businesses leave that to their marketing team, and I think it's actually a mistake. Like we talked about, like I think we have to get away from these silos, and if our marketing team is just creating content for the sake of creating content, then what's interesting to them or what they think is useful is what they're going to produce, and they're not actually getting that feedback from the customer. And so the way that you get, to me, the way that you get that feedback from the customer isn't through marketing. Like you don't get marketing feedback, you get sales feedback.
Yep.
And
Actually, to like one up you on that, kind of interesting. So one of the ways HubSpot actually handles that is we actually have a Slack channel that is between our marketing and sales departments. And the whole channel itself is dedicated to marketing, posting content that's been working really well and asking for sales' feedback on it. Number one, before they actually post it, but number two, in situations where they think it's something that's been converted highly or that has high traffic and it's about a specific, maybe it's about a specific product or something that we're trying to launch or sell more of, they actually will ask sales for feedback so that they can create a condensed version for sales. So they're just kind of utilizing the tools available to us and just using a Slack channel, especially in this time of COVID where we can't kind of internally meet all the time in person. It's been a really nice way to create that feedback loop to be able to say, like, hey, here's some content that's been working really well just based on kind of metrics. What's your guys' feedback on it? And would it be helpful if we condense this? What's your feedback on creating a condensed version of this because it's been working pretty well?
That's interesting to me. And I think that like we kind of come from two different worlds, right? Like we're in the agency world, and our feedback from sales to marketing is a very small number of people, right? With HubSpot, like you're looking at hundreds of employees, maybe thousands. I don't know how many employees HubSpot actually has, but like
it's three. It's just three. We make it look big, but it's just 3 people.
It's Brian, Darmesh, and Romeo.
Yep. I'm outsourced.
Consultant.
And Romeo.
But I mean, that's interesting to me. Like, what does that look like? Because I mean, a lot of businesses fall into that trap of like too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Like where you get so many different opinions that nothing actually gets done. And like with us, like Michael providing feedback to Zach or whoever created a piece of content, like that's an easy process.
Yeah.
What does that look like when you post it to a Slack channel that's got hundreds of people in it?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I do think there needs to be. You're absolutely right. Like there being kind of different worlds in that facet of like you have a larger company like that, you're probably going to have a lot of voices. I think there does need to be sort of a de facto kind of decision maker, whether that's like a director of marketing and director of sales kind of being that last sort of bastion of approval or voice on it.
Okay.
I think that is important to kind of establish that main POC, point of contact and kind of decision maker on it, especially in that environment with a lot of people. For smaller companies, I think that you have a true nugget of value there because it's smaller and you don't have as many voices. You have a lot more of a personal touch and a connection that your team can make with each other and find kind of a good like a good cadence to build with each other. And it's likely a little bit. They both have their pluses. My smaller team, you're probably being pulled in lots of different directions. So it's important to do make the time for it and do connect with each other and kind of have a standing thing where you can meet, go through some of the content together and get that feedback. With a larger thing, we kind of use that Slack channel because we don't have the ability to create that sort of in-person cadence as much because so many people's times is all over the place. So I think it is long-winded answer. I think it's important to kind of establish that main decision maker for both of those teams, but still ensure that the rest of the team's voices are heard on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And like it's one of those things that so many businesses, whether they use HubSpot or not, lean on HubSpot for content, right? Because there's just such a wealth of education there. And like HubSpot has probably put out 1,000 pieces of content while we've been on this podcast. It just feels like obviously like there's a huge team behind this, and like there's so many great pieces that come out. But for the average company, like that's not a reality, and so you have to really kind of pick and choose and really figure out what's going to have the biggest impact. And so really creating that process where sales feels like they can go to marketing and say, hey, I'm getting this question, I'm feeling this pain from our prospects, we need some content around this, and really having that open communication and kind of teamwork along with that, because it has always been such a battle between the two.
Yeah.
That marketing doesn't always want to hear the sales team's perspective on, hey, that content should actually be this, or we need to change this in your content. And at the same time, like sales doesn't always want to review every piece of content and see, that's not necessarily a like revenue generating or commission generating task to review all the marketing content, right?
Yeah. To your point, I think establishing some empathy for each other is also a big first step in creating that synergy. Like knowing it's kind of like a tale of it's kind of like efficiency versus effectiveness. Marketing is really geared towards efficiency. They have a limited budget, trying to get the greatest return on investment with a really low marketing budget and low spend, and they're judged by like a net result of volume, whereas sales is more tied to like effectiveness and to quotas. So like being able to establish and have them understand what dog they have in the fight with each other, so that they can kind of be able to come to the table a little bit more with a more established understanding of like, all right, here's sort of both of our goals and incentives here. Like, how do we make and how does the sales team equip the marketing team to be able to create content that is vital to the sales team and being able to sell better. So I think really understanding that they both have areas they're judged on, and sales really needs to find a way to understand that everything marketing is doing is to their benefit and vice versa.
Right, or at least it should be, right?
Right, it should be. Yes, it's the dream.
And I think it's interesting that so for us, just so everyone knows, like we are a HubSpot platinum agency with, we work with John probably more than John wants to hear from us. But it's, and John does kind of have a marketing role, right? Like you're there to help from a marketing standpoint, but a lot of times, like when we're talking or even talking about a client or a process or whatever, like it is being tied back to sales. And so we run the Boulder HubSpot user group. We have our second HubSpot user group coming up on July 23rd, and John is actually our presenter. And so we're going to be talking about sales and marketing synergy and how to use content to close deals, right? Do you want to kind of give a quick
synopsis
of what we're talking about there?
100%. Very excited to do that, by the way. I love being able to do hugs. It's been sad not being able to do it in person, but I really hats off to you guys, and I'm not going to do it because I have a really bad quarantine haircut right now. On your ability to be able to pivot and do this virtually. Not a lot of folks have been able to do it well, and I'm just psyched that you guys have been able to pivot in these like really hard times and still create something super valuable in an environment where people can kind of continue to learn to keep their businesses moving. Overall, like the whole conversation that we're going to be having is along the lines of, okay, like we're in this new era of sort of being able and having to create a digital relationship. How can sales really continue moving in a path forward in that light, and how can they do so by using content? So how can they use kind of like scratching the surface of what we talked about today, but really doing a deep dive on how can they use content to sell? Why should they use it? what type of content works effectively and where inside of your sales process. So where specifically in those steps to sell, where is different content the best placed? How you can create that content and best be able to, not only with sales kind of creating it themselves, but work with your marketing team, the folks that are creating that content. How can you create synergy between those two teams to more effectively not only spend those dollars as far as marketing budget in the right way to create the best content for your sales team, but also being able to create more of a feedback loop between the two teams to sort of understand that you're both benefiting each other,
Sure.
and it's going to be more powerful if you are having those conversations together. So that's high level, is the sort of the why, how, what, and then next steps and quick tips to actually start to take steps in the right direction.
Cool. Yeah, we're super excited to have you. Just so everyone knows, it's on July 23rd, so next week, at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So I'll have the link down below, but join us. It's a free event, doesn't cost you anything. Lots of great, professionals in all different industries and worlds kind of join us, and would love to see you there. So like the last part of the podcast is, how's the buzz?
I was about to say, do we finish it? Do we down it?
Yeah, I think it's
everybody houses theirs at this point. Yeah.
So I mean, I guess, is Sam Adams like that big of a deal in Boston?
It's I mean, everybody thinks it's you make the connect the dots sort of to just the revolutionary roots of Sam Adams. It was started in Boston. The brewery is right outside of Boston. It's a good beer. They have a really small brewery, but Harpoon is the other probably well-known one that's from the Boston area. That they have a big brewery in the Seaport. I'm a fan of Sam Boston Lager. What do you guys think? Scale 1 to 10.
I think it's good. I think it's one of those beers that, like, I could do 1 or 2, but it's not something I want to drink.
Like middle of the road, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not light enough, but it's not super heavy. So give me one to watch a game or something like that, and I'd be happy.
Yep. Sorry, by the way, Sam Adams. I don't mean to blow up your marketing right now.
That wasn't exactly a commercial for them, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty good. I'm typically more of like a hoppy beer guy, an IPA kind of drinker. But I would definitely.
You guys are in Denver. You have great beers out there.
Real snobby when it comes to beer.
Yeah.
I mean, I would definitely choose this over like a regular lager. That's just super light and basically water. So I mean,
tell us how you really feel, okay?
But yeah, I mean, it's not bad. Before we got on here, I hadn't had a Sam Adams in forever, and I remember not liking it that much, and I like it much better than I remember liking it.
There we
so.
go.
They've improved the recipe since last time.
I think it was based on my personal feedback. So
yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, John.
Sorry, Sam Adams.
Right.
Right.
John, it's been great having you on. I really appreciate you taking the time and joining us, and we're really looking forward to the HubSpot user group next week. Make sure to like and subscribe. We'll have another episode in a couple weeks. Also, like I said, make sure to check out the link below for the HubSpot user group. Even if you're not in the Boulder, Denver area, it's open to anyone. Obviously, since things are virtual and we're going to be doing it through Zoom, if you're in Cambodia, go ahead and join us. We'd love to see you there. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.